Hi everyone, Aidan here with etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at and later be showing you how to install this Access TonnoSport soft roll-up tonneau cover on our 2019 GMC Sierra 2500. Now with this being a soft cover, you're not going to get the best security. Anyone with a knife could cut through this vinyl material and get to the contents of your bed inside. But if you're the type of person that doesn't frequently store things in the bed, like tools or other valuables, then for me, security isn't as big of a concern. And really, most of the time, just keeping the stuff covered and out of sight keeps it out of mind from sticky fingers. So for me, any cover is better than no cover, whether it's soft or hard. But a lot of people will choose to go for a soft cover strictly for the general weather protection, because if you do have something in here, say for like a road trip, you've got people's luggage back here, and it does happen to rain on your drive, this is going to give you a ton of protection from those elements and keep your stuff just a little bit more dry. Plus, soft covers are usually pretty quick to operate. And this cover is no different. With it being a soft rolling cover, I find these to be really easy to operate. You've got a release trigger on the driver's side that you just pull to disengage the latch, and from there we can just roll the cover up. This one rolls really evenly, and because it's pretty small, it's easy to do, and quick to get it to the cab here, where we can go to either side and buckle it in to hold it closed, or hold it open rather, in this open position. But one of the reasons I really like the rolling style is because it allows more use of your truck bed. For me, standing right here in the bed, if we had a folding cover, I wouldn't be able to be here. Soft folding covers, generally, when they're fully open, will still block about a third of your bed, if not more. So to have the roll condensed down so much more here, and even then still have the ability to push it a little bit further if need be. Say you've got like a large box from the hardware store and you want to push it a bit closer to the cab, you can. And you're just going to get a lot more usable space out of your truck bed. So for me, that's what I'd be looking for. When I do use my truck bed, I want to use it to its fullest extent. And if that's you, especially if you have the factory towing prep package and you've got a camper or something, a soft roll-up is probably the one that you're going to have to go with. Now this is going to be a no-drill clamp-on installation. In the middle and the front, you've got some pretty simple, just tight bite clamps, and at the tailgate end, you've got some larger clamps that actually utilize your truck's stake pockets to drop some hardware down in and clamp it all together. It means you're going to get a solid attachment point a bit closer to the end of the cover and keep this rail a bit more supported at that end, which I really like. That's one thing with most tonneau covers on the Sierras that you'll find is that the clamps can only go so far before they start hitting that portion of the bed that kind of juts out. It's a real niche problem, but for me, I like the way this is set up, and it's pretty unobtrusive. You just have to watch out for it if you do plan on using something like a tie-down point that would install in your stake pocket. Because there's something in there now, you're probably not going to have the clearance for it. Closing the cover does take a little bit more time, and it's not necessarily the physical act of closing it. Unrolling this is pretty straightforward. You just have to get the latches lined up and throw that down to close it. But with really any soft roll-up cover, this one especially, the hook and loop doesn't really grab on its own, so you have to go down through the sides and just press it down to make sure that the cover is biting down to that side rail as best it can and giving you the best weather protection. But speaking of weather protection, when I close the tailgate, this is where I start to be a little bit disappointed, just because there are some pretty sizable air gaps in both the front and the rear corners. And the weather strip that the tailgate presses against is just an extension of the vinyl material we see up top. It's great because it's not going to soak up water or let it pass through, but that material is thin and that weather strip is pretty short. Most tonneau covers, you'll see something like a rubber weather strip, which in my opinion is just a better option. They're typically bigger and will be able to hold back more water before giving. So if you are looking for better weather protection, I would never say that any tonneau cover is waterproof. I would recommend looking at the etrailer soft roll-up tonneau cover. We actually tested that cover on this very truck today, and I was super pleased with the fit. The weather strips are longer than the ones here, and it gave us a much better seal at both the cab end and the tailgate end of the truck. Overall fit and finish on the cover is something I am really happy with though, just because it's gonna look really nice. It's a super flat cover, and I think that just makes it look a lot more clean when it's installed and fully closed like this. Because it sits inside of the bed rails, it doesn't extend too far out to the sides, and it only sticks up about a ½ inch from the top of the bed rails. So all in all, fairly low profile, and looks like it really does belong on the truck. And that's one thing I do think it has the edge on over that eTrailer cover I mentioned earlier. The eTrailer cover is a lot taller and sticks out to the sides quite a bit more, so for me, it's not as nice of a look. It really just comes down to whether or not the aesthetics matter that much to you. If you want something that looks better, go with this one. If you want something that has a bit more weather protection, go with the eTrailer. But overall, if you're concerned about the installation, that's going to be pretty straightforward, and we can walk you through that process and what it looks like for this truck right now. First thing you want to do for your installation is just take your side rails and figure out which side is which. The side that I'm holding up to the camera here right now is the tailgate end with that release latch. And looking at the side here, we've got a hook and loop section on the outside edge and this large flat section that'll face towards the inside of the truck bed. So right now we know we're holding the driver's side. You're just going to take this up to the truck bed rail, line the lip up with the top of that bed rail, and push it as far forward as it'll go, right about there, and just hold it in place with one hand. With the other, you can take your first clamp. We're just going to keep this pretty loose for right now, but feed it up underneath the bed rail, roughly in the middle. And while this is difficult to do alone, it's certainly possible. Just tighten that nut down by hand with your index finger and your thumb. Once it's tight enough, it'll at least hold itself there and allow you to grab your 13mm wrench or socket. ½ inch will work too. And you can come back through and just get that nice and snug so that the tonneau cover rail will hold itself in place and allow you to more freely do the remaining clamps. One thing to note with these clamps is that they do have certain orientations. The way I've got ours set up for our Sierra today, because the opening on the bed rail that it's biting to is so wide, is where I've got these two thicker portions at the bottom, allowing the clamp to open up to a wider position here. If you're looking at this for a different model of truck, you might find that you need a different orientation, but that's what's working with our Sierra today. I'll repeat this at the cab side of the truck, and we'll walk through what the tailgate clamp looks like. Now, your tailgate clamp will look a little different. It's going to be pretty long, and it's going to utilize the stake pocket on top of your bed rail to attach. So, for starters, just separate the two pieces. It's going to come already assembled, and you just keep the two halves separate. Remember which one the carriage bolt came from. So I'll just set that to the side here. And just below the stake pocket on the inside of the bed, we're going to have this rubber plug that's just hiding a hole there. We need to have this removed because that's where a bolt's going to feed out. To make that process a little easier, grab the included pull wire, feed the coiled end through that hole and up out the top. And once that coiled end is feeding out the top, take your plate that the carriage bolt was through, feed that on with the teeth facing towards the coils, and then we can take our carriage bolt, thread that on, and we can pull everything through. Now with this plate, you want it to be with this long side facing down, so how this hole is kind of offset. This top side here is going to go down in first. I'm going to pull that coil through, just like that, and my hand that's in the stake pocket is just going to hold that carriage bolt in place while I unthread the pull wire here, because we do want to reuse this for the other side. So you don't want to mess those threads up. With it right here, your kit's going to come with these two protective pads with adhesive backing. I'm just going to stick that directly on underneath that hole where there's this divot just below that. We can then take the other side of that clamp, feed that up so that the teeth at the top are grabbing our rail, and thread on the nut on the other side. I'm just trying to get a few threads started here so that I can a bit more freely position that clamp how I want it. And same thing, just go back through with your tool and tighten it down. With both rails in place, we can take our cover and set it on the tailgate. You should see a large metal bar on there, and we want to flip that so that this channel on the underside is facing up. In that channel, we should have two nuts. Just push one to either side, and take a look at your tensioners. There should be an R and an L, R for passenger side, L for driver side, and we want to line this middle channel up with this one right here. Get that hole lined up with the nut, and take your longer bolts with washers and just loosely thread that into the nut underneath on either side. We want this to be able to have some room for movement before we take it up to the truck. We can then take that roll and bring it to the front of our truck, where we can just set it on top of those side rails loosely for now. Make sure that the pieces we installed earlier aren't getting in your way, because we want that bar underneath to just sit between the two side rails. And probably need to push it forward a fair bit here before making any further adjustments. Now we can see all those adjustments underneath. The piece we just installed earlier, we want to push that all the way to the side where that will engage underneath the side rail we installed first. Then we've got our tensioning plate that we can flip up, and there's going to be a hole on that tensioning plate. We want it to align with the hole on our side rail. So for us, I need to bring it closer to the tailgate, and we should be able to pass the shorter bolt in our kit through all that and have it pass out the bottom. I'll try to keep my hands out of the way as best I can here. We just want to get all that aligned. Once it is, secure it with a nut underneath. Repeat that on both sides, and then go back through and tighten both that nut and bolt and the lone bolt closest to the cab. With everything tightened down though, you can go ahead and unroll it and test for fitment. Now as you're unrolling this, you're gonna get a pretty loose fit around the sides with that hook and loop, so even once you throw the cover, you'll probably have to go back through and just press that hook and loop down to make sure that it's all hooking in properly. But when you hook those latches in, it shouldn't feel like it's overly tight to push that down into place and latch it, and we shouldn't see too many wrinkles on the cover when we do throw it. Right here feels actually pretty perfect. If I needed to though, I could go back to those tensioners and dial them in and adjust them to loosen or tighten the cover. But we also do want to check our tailgate clearance, make sure that nothing is hitting and that the vinyl strap here is making contact with that to help with water intrusion. And honestly, everything here is looking really good. Once you're happy with the install though, that'll do it for our look at and installation of the TonnoSport soft roll-up tonneau cover on our 2019 GMC Sierra 2500. My name's Aidan, and thank you for watching.